So Chelsea and sorry, Chelsea. Chelsea is going to talk about some parts of the plan, some important things that she looks for as she's reviewing. She'll introduce herself and her role and things like that. Go through some parts of the plan, talk about some of that kind of stuff, and how all of that stuff needs to align, the assessment, the outcomes, things like that. And then I will jump in as needed and also talk about what I look for when I'm looking for documentation, when I'm reaching out to you guys for documentation and service reviews, things like that. And then we're going to break out into breakout rooms when we're finished chatting and work on some action steps and learning log activities. So go ahead, Chelsea.
Okay. So I'm Chelsea. I'm an SSA quality assurance coordinator with the county. So I've been in ISC for like the past 4.5 years or so. So I'm sure I've worked with some of you guys on the call. My role right now is to review plans randomly with coordinators, go through, if there are pieces in the plan that are missing or are not right, need more clarification, things like that. So I'll meet with the ISCs one-on-one. We'll go through those things in the plan that need to be updated. I do forward those things on to their supervisors as well, and then follow up with them to make sure those corrections are made. So some of the biggest things, one of the things that I was going to go through with you guys today, I did pull a plan randomly and black some personal information out of that. But I was going to go through and just show you guys like different parts of the plan, where to find specific things, because I know it can be overwhelming when you're getting all these different attachments, all these different pages. So I'll point out like some different things of where you can find pieces of information. And if you have any questions, just let me know. So I'm going to share my screen. If I can. Okay, sweet. So you guys should see an ISP right now, hopefully.
Yes, we do. Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is kind of an example. Like I said, if you guys have questions, please just yell out and let me know. But this would be what you should be getting from us, from an ISC assistant. So this would be the front page. Typically has demographic information, just general information about the person, how they communicate, and important people in their lives. So the next part of the plan is the important to, important for quick summary. So all of this information, they're pulling it straight from the modules that are within the discovery. And this is supposed to be just information, just important information in each one of those sections that providers really need to be aware of to make sure they're supporting the person. This section should be pretty well balanced with the important to, important for. And the other part that gets pulled over from the plan is also the risk section. So within the modules, there should be different risks. This right here is a good spot that all of those risks should be pulled over and all in one area of the plan. The next part, which we're not going to use these specific outcomes for the breakout section, but this was just, so both of these there's 2 outcomes in this plan, and the couple important pieces would be how progress is measured. I'm sure a lot of you guys get requests for quarterly meetings or reviewing progress. So that kind of goes off of this area right here. And then we've got the support considerations, ways to work towards that outcome. And then this is a separate outcome, which we won't go through. It should be the exact same information. So I'm gonna scroll down. Sometimes, so this plan or this section here has, this is what we call it is the service listings, but it details exactly who the providers are. I apologize. But it details who the providers are, what services they're doing. And I'm gonna keep. So normally and it kind of depends how this is printed. So this is the signature page. And normally this is something that is on the very back of the plan. But this shows you, this should have the providers that are part of the plan. And it should say, this is when you guys are signing and saying, yes, this is what we're gonna do. We agree to this plan. The information that is in here is correct. You know, we agree that we're gonna provide those services. And then this is just, the discovery is pretty much like the meat and potatoes of the plan, all of the detailed information. This section here is what was in the quick summary part. So they pull that directly and put that in the quick summary at the top of the plan. A couple important things. I mean, when you guys are looking through plans, I know there's a lot of information. And there's so much information, but a couple big things that should definitely be in there. And even when I'm reviewing plans, things that I'm looking at, guardianship information, power of attorney, those types of important things should be found typically somewhere in the communication and learning. Sometimes those things can also be, of course, in the contacts or the connection section as well. But those are important things to note. Community membership, what the person likes to do, where they like to go. This is also a good spot to put specific, if there are specific supervision levels that a provider should be following in the community, if they're supposed to be right next to the person, or, you know, whatever, if it's just visual supervision that's supposed to be provided, that should be where this information is found in this module. And then the day-to-day is typically, you know, personal care, meals, food. One thing I will note too that I look at on my end, the level of care assessment that when we're doing ISP reviews and then the DDP assessment, those things should all correlate with the modules in the plan. So if there are things that are being said in the level of care assessment that the person is, you know, needs help with showering, you know, needs help with toileting, you know, things like that, but then the plan says they're totally independent, that's something that we definitely need to figure out where the miscommunication is or what we need to update, because those things should all flow and all align. Day-to-day is also a good spot for any type of like supervision levels at home too. If the person stays at home by themselves, if they just have staff that check in with them occasionally, you know, things like that. Path to community employment should be reviewed annually with the team. And the finance module would be where you can find information, who the payee is. Does the person carry cash? Do they like to carry a debit card? Who they bank with? You know, what assistance that they need with making sure their bills are paid. Benefits are all in order, like Medicaid, Medicare, all of those, food stamp cards, anything like that. And then some of these, like getting around, I mean, those are pretty self-explanatory. What, if, does the person use LPT? Do they need help scheduling rides? You know, who helps them get to where they need to go? And then health and wellness. Important things to note in this one would be medical appointments, like who helps coordinate and transport to medical appointments, who helps with administering their medications. Do they do that on their own? What special things that they would need with medications? Do they take that with food? Do they specifically, you know, want orange juice when they take their medications? What things would, you know, how to help them best with that. Finally is the, okay, well, almost finally. So home and housing. This would, so some of these modules too, I will say, like, for me personally, I don't always use every single module, because some information can be repeated, but like the home and housing, this would definitely be an important one to fill out. If the person lives at home and they're looking to move out on an apartment with a roommate, or they want an apartment on their own, you know, this would be a good module to fill out. That would perfectly align with an outcome or what they're wanting to achieve. So any information like that, if the person is planning to move out, find a roommate, things like that. And the relationships would be important people in their lives. How do they connect with those people? Typically the essential health is found towards the back. And that would be where all of their diagnosis should be found here. Any allergies, reactions to those allergies, adaptive equipment, and then the medications that the individuals take. And those medications should line up with the diagnoses that they have. You'll also find the assessments back here, and it could be, you know, just the oral med assessment, G-tube, but those are also found in the essential health. Last things would be the contacts, which I didn't print everything that goes with that because it would have just been more to black out, but the plan should also have contacts, and then of course action plans that go along with the outcome and how they're going to achieve their outcome. So that is typically what should be found in an ISP. Some important things, you know, important pieces that you can find in plans. I don't know if you guys have questions at this point. I know not every single ISC puts things in certain places, but I guess that's kind of my role a little bit, is to help direct ISCs to maybe some places that they could add some of that information.
I have a question.
Hey, Pam.
Shocking, I know.
I love when you have questions.
Do you think you could help describe a little bit more about that balance between important 2 and important 4 and how that looks in a plan?
Yeah. So the important 2, important 4 section is supposed to be like the discovery module is supposed to be where you guys put all of, well, the team comes together, they fill out all the details of the plan. But the important to, important for section is really supposed to be the spot where you guys pick, where the team picks out super important things, I guess. The number one thing that you should know about that person. And so those things should balance. It shouldn't be a situation where we have more important fours than we do important twos. It should be something to where the important two and the important four section are balanced.
I'll give you a quick example.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's okay. So for example, if it says it's important to Bill to go to bed at 9 o'clock. It's important to Bill to get up early enough on Wednesdays to have us get up early enough on Wednesdays to wait. Let me start over. I just lost my train of thought because I wasn't prepared. So it's important for Bill to go to bed at 9 o'clock. Okay. But it's important for Bill to be to work on time. And so it might sound, it's important to him to go to bed at 9 because he wants to be up for work in the morning. But sometimes he might not want to go to bed at 9. And so it's important for his staff to know that the reason it is that we encourage that is because he gets really upset if his routine is broken and he's not ready for work on time. I went the long way around trying to say what I just said, but I had it in my head the whole time. And then as soon as I started talking about it, I lost it. But so important fours are important twos are going to be things like, this is what this person wants. And important fours are going to be like, how can we support him to get there safely? And these are the things that we know as providers that we don't maybe bring up to that person that we don't call out that person on, that we know is just important to support him to do. So important two, the things he want to do. Important four, how do we get him to do it and he's healthy and safe, basically. If that answered your question at all, but that was a really long way. Okay.
Chelsea, I have a question, or Jamie, whichever. I know in the ISP, towards the back, there is an action plan. There's a document that says action plan. And I know some providers get confused because when they're asked for their action plan, it's going to be different than what they're seeing in the ISP. Is that something we're going to go over later? And if so, that's fine. I just wanted to kind of show that there's a little bit of confusion as to there's an action plan already in the plan, but then they're asked for an action plan. And if we could at some point kind of share the differences between those two plans since they're called the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, we're gonna go over action plans here in a few minutes, but and that's something. So I will say, like, if the team, it's important to come together so that the team can work on those action plans together, because I do know at times, if they're not, then, or if that doesn't happen, then what can happen is the support consideration section, which also kind of details somewhat, but not specifically. So the support considerations talk about where, like what the provider does for the person and helps them with their goal. But a lot of that information can also just be general information. It's not always, it's not always exactly pertaining to that outcome. And so I do know at times too, some of those support considerations get kind of pulled over into an action plan, but those are not specifically for achieving that outcome. It's just like general tasks that the provider also does along with the outcome. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely confusing.
Oh, it's funny that you should mention action plans, Kristen, because we're going to talk about that. She mentioned all of the things that she looks for in a plan, and I just want to throw out there to all of you providers too, and I know that we say this a lot, but if there's ever a time that you're looking at a plan and you see something that you don't understand, or something is missing, important information that you think should be there, if there's anything in there that you don't recall maybe talking about in a meeting or something, anything at all, any discrepancies, please reach out to your ISC and ask those questions. Sometimes things could be missed. Sometimes it just could be like a wording issue. So it's really important to reach out and ask those questions. Don't wait for the ISC to call you in 3 months and ask for something, and maybe you don't have it because you didn't ask a question about the plan. And so, we're all a team, and we want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So please reach out if there's ever any sort of discrepancy when you're looking at a plan. And so when she talked about the plan, I want to talk about when I make a visit to a provider or call a provider to do a review. I like, first of all, mainly to talk about the services that you're providing. What kind of things are you doing that are relevant to the person's outcome? How are things going? Is there anything that you need support with? That kind of thing. And then, looking at documentation, there's always service documentation. And basically that is, you're kind of checking the box. Yes, I provided the service that day. Yes, I provided the service. No, we didn't. The person refused, or it wasn't available to them, or however you're keeping that kind of service documentation. And that's good. But it's really, really important that we are keeping progress documentation. And we can keep those on a learning log, and I can show you one of those. If most of you are probably familiar with those, but if you're not, I am going to show you guys a copy of that, and we can also send it to you if you'd like. But keep in mind, this information does not have to be written on a learning log per se. It just has to be written down. Some people have notes sections on the backs of their service documentation. That's fine too. And what should be written on those kind of things are, anytime you're working on an outcome and somebody's making progress on that outcome, if there's new learning, if there's aha moments, something great that happened, if there was maybe a day that the person you're providing services to maybe was just having a rough day, note that. What were the circumstances? What was the environment? What did you do to support that person? What would you do differently next time? Those sorts of things. Very detailed information is important, because our job is to help people become more independent, right? And live fulfilling lives. And it's our job to make sure that they're getting there. And so how are we documenting that we are doing that for them? How are we documenting that we're working on those sorts of things? And so it's showing that somebody's making progress or not making progress. Either way, those are important. And if they're not making progress, then that's another time you can reach out to your ISC and say, hey, we've been working really hard and he is just not interested, or we're stuck in a certain step, or whatever the case may be. Reach out. It may be time to reevaluate. Maybe that person is just not interested anymore, and that's fine. Let's talk about something different for him or them. Secondly, it's also helpful. Unfortunately, we know a lot of agencies have a lot of turnover, and sometimes it's helpful. Well, no, it's always helpful to be able to look back at somebody's learning log or documentation and know some of those things I just mentioned. Well, we know this person had a rough day because this happened, and this is how that staff person supported them. We know that they've already done this activity 10 times and it wasn't successful, so let's try something different. So it's helpful in all aspects of providing that service to somebody. So let me show you, let me start over. We're going to talk about action plans first, and then I'll show you a learning log. And so I'm going to show you what an action plan looks like. And Kristen mentioned that in the back of an ISP, or the back of the plan that you get, it'll say action plan section or action plan. And I know some of you guys probably aren't real familiar, like you get that and what do you do with it? Okay, it's an action plan. So now what do I do? And as a provider, it's your responsibility to write action steps. And those action steps are going to be basically, what are you going to do to help that person get to their outcome? How are you going to make their day successful? What is it that you are going to do to get that person where they want to go? And then when you do those steps, that's when you put that information on a learning log. So let me talk more in depth about that. Let me show you what an action plan looks like. And stop me along the way if anybody has questions, or put something in the chat. I gotta share my screen. Okay. All right, so can everybody see that? Okay. So this is what an action plan looks like. These are not documents that, this document is not something that you're required to fill out. However, Chelsea and I feel, and we've used these in the past, but Chelsea and I felt that sometimes it's easier if you have something that sections out everything that you're supposed to have on there. So the outcome has to be there. The support considerations are going to be there. And then you are going to write the action steps. So it's a useful tool if you want to use it, but today we're just going to go through what that looks like. So obviously the person that you're supporting, the outcome name is going to be here. And you'll see some of these filled out when we go into our breakout rooms. And then here where it says support considerations are going to be the support considerations that are listed under the outcome in the plan. And they're all written differently. Chelsea kind of mentioned that. Sometimes they're written really concrete, like action steps. Sometimes they're not. And it just kind of depends on who is writing it, because everybody has different writing styles and things like that. But basically, a support consideration is going to be like, these are the things that you need to keep in mind when you're providing the service to this person. These are things to keep in mind, or things to consider when you're supporting the person to complete steps of their outcome. And you'll see that more in detail when we have our completed ones. And then down here is action steps. And that is where you guys as a provider will write down exactly what it is that you're going to do to help that person reach their outcome. For example, Tom wants to work, and one of the things that he would like to do is volunteer. And so one of your action steps could be, Tom is volunteering 2 times a week. Okay. And so then when that action step is worked on, you write that on your learning log. Today, Tom volunteered at the Humane Society for 3 hours. This is what he did. This is what he liked. This is what he didn't like. This is how we supported the person. This is how we supported Tom during this time. Now, if he goes to the Humane Society twice a week, every week, you don't have to write, he went to the Humane Society, he went to the Humane Society, he went to the Humane Society to volunteer. It could be more like, if there's any change in that, or he volunteered at a different place, or he volunteered for a longer period of time, or he tried a different task, anything new, that kind of thing. And like I said, we can get to more detail when we get into our breakout rooms. But in the meantime, before we do that, does anybody have any questions about anything I just talked about? I know I talk fast, sorry. Oh, okay, and then this is what a learning log looks like. And you don't have to use a learning log to document progress, but you do have to document progress on an outcome. So you could use this because like I said before about the action plan, it's nice to know that this is exactly the information that we're looking for. It spells it right out here for you. And you have these boxes to do that. You can do it on a documentation sheet that doesn't look like this, as long as you are capturing these important things. What was the activity that the person was doing? What went well? What did you find useful about the activity? How did you support the person in doing the activity? And then what did you try that didn't work? Maybe what did you find that wasn't useful about it, and why? And how did you support that person if it maybe triggered an event that you had to do some extra support for, and what would you have done differently next time? So this is kind of the stuff, like, these are the things that we need to watch out for and work on. Here is, this is what went well, and this is what we're going to continue to do to support the person. And what was the activity? Anything that was new learning, any aha moments, anytime you complete an action step of an action plan, anytime there's progress on an outcome, that should all be listed on your learning log or something that's similar. It doesn't necessarily have to be this document. But we have these if you guys want them. Okay. Any questions?
Can I raise my hand?
Of course.
So we talk about the learning log having all that information that we want in it. But if you read all those prompts, none of them tell me to track progress. So, I mean, it's just pretty vague to me. So where do you want us to put progress in that learning log? How do we identify that and document that in that learning log?
Okay, let me pull it back up. Oh my gosh, I couldn't find the button for share screen. Okay, can you guys see that again? Still there, that's good. Okay. So you're gonna have your outcome listed here. And here could be, this is what so Tom volunteered at the Humane Society today for 2 hours. And today he worked with the dogs. And here you could say, we found out that he really enjoys working with the dogs. However, there's this particular task that he's not real crazy about, or he needs assistance with, whatever the case may be. So then the next time you go to the Humane Society, it could be the same thing. Maybe he went to the Humane Society, he worked with the dogs, but today, whatever this task was here today, he mastered that task on his own, or he did it without prompts, or he initiated a new task. Today he decided, or he asked about volunteering at a different place. And today he got offered a job at the place he was volunteering. Now that's the ultimate goal, right? Because he wants to get a job. And so, and we can give more details when we have actual steps in front of us, which I could have pulled one of those up, but then it would give it away, right? Because everybody's going to get their own action plan. But does that help clear it up, Kyle? Kind of clear as mud?
It is clear as mud. And I just think what we've got to be clear about is,
yes,
when these are just vague questions that are in here, that's not what we just don't want you to answer the questions. We want to document some kind of steps towards more and more independence, whether it's, and it might not even be related to the actual outcome, but maybe it causes this discussion to bring back to the team and say, hey, this outcome seems to be kind of vague, because he's doing all these other really, really cool things that look like he wants to be, or there's independence growing in another area. So I think it's something we have to really, really identify what progress means. Because I think when we just say, I don't think any of those questions to me, what would you try differently? How would you support your person? None of those things indicate progress to me.
well,
And I also think, oh, sorry, Jamie.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, when with what you're saying, Kyle, if they are trying other things and it really doesn't pertain to that outcome, or it doesn't seem like it's, when we are doing those quarterly monitorings, that's a great time to come together and say, hey, this outcome isn't working for the person. They're learning or finding other things that they're more interested in. We need to fix this, change it, see what else.
But we wouldn't want to wait for the quarterly monitoring. I mean, if we're
Not
noticing
an extreme case.
something's happening and changing, like, we would want to be more organic with that shift versus, well, we have to wait till that, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that would be great if we can, if that happens, that would be wonderful. But yeah, definitely, if it is when we are meeting, bringing those things up, that's great.
Yeah, so you're right. You use this information to talk about those sorts of things, not necessarily waiting to your quarterly review, but whenever you feel the need to do that. But I was just thinking about some documentation I looked at the other day, and the outcome was so-and-so will, the backstory on her is she's not real social. She's like to stay at home. She doesn't really like to talk to anybody, and getting her to come to ADS at all is kind of a big step for her. So the next step for her was, being social and trying new activities and things like that. And so some of the documentation some of the things that were written down were, today she initiated conversation with a new person, and they talked about, whatever the case may be. And then the next day, maybe they had a longer conversation. And then the next time that you write something, it could be, she invited this person to go on an activity with her, or go to the movies, or initiated some sort of activity, which is that person's outcome, first of all. And second of all, that is progress for her, because that's not something that she would normally do or has normally done in the past. We can get some better examples of things like that when we have actual outcomes in front of us, which we will in our breakout rooms. But so those sorts of things, and maybe this wording can be different. I think those are, and maybe I should have mentioned too, that those are just kind of prompts for somebody. So what did they do here today? She was at the center, and she initiated conversation with Bill for the first time. they talked about cars and they laughed and had a great time. And then the next day, so the next day they talked about this, and then now she's asking him if he wants to go to a car show or something. And so she's initiating those social skills on her own that she didn't do before. Again, without having an outcome right in front of you, it might be hard to explain for me to explain some of that stuff, but we're going to do that in our breakout rooms. So I hope that this didn't just confuse any of you anymore. Sorry if it did. Thanks, Kyle, for that.
Hey, Jamie, Allison had asked if the progress measures could be captured through the action steps.
Yes. So yes, because you're going to write the action steps out, and the action steps are going to say, this is what me as the provider are going to do to help this person reach their outcome. And so every time you are working on one of those steps, you can write that on your learning log or whatever documentation that it is, as this is the step that we did. This is, what worked and what didn't. This is how it was improved from the last time, or he's done. He completed this action step. We're moving on to the next kind of thing. Does that answer your question, Allison?
Yeah, I was actually just trying to see if, Kyle would agree that if we took those action steps, for instance, if we had an outcome that Susie wanted to cook a meal for her mom, those action steps would be along the lines of picking out a recipe, going to the grocery store, cooking a practice meal, and then the progress could be measured through each one of those action steps. If she picked out a meal and then changed her mind, then the progress, we're still at that picking out a meal stage. But once she's picked out that meal, then we move on to the next stage of that outcome. And that's where that progress is kind of measured through the action steps.
Yes, and you can, like, something like that is progressive, learning how to cook in general. So yeah, today, or they mastered looking for the recipe and figuring out what they wanted to do. Then it was making a grocery list, and it was going to the grocery store. And every time you complete an action step, yes, you document what that looked like on a learning log or something like it. It doesn't necessarily have to be progressive. It can be, whenever they're completed. But so yes, anytime an action step is worked on and or is complete, you would add that to the learning log. But it doesn't only have, it could be anything. It doesn't have to necessarily only be your action steps, but that's how you're going to show that you are working on the outcome and what you're doing to get that person there, and how are they doing with it? How, where are they at in the process? What's the end result? That kind of thing. And I think what happens a lot is we, as providers, I used to be a provider too, and I know there's a lot going on sometimes, but what happens a lot, I think, is that we have it all up here. Like, yes, we provided this service today. We know what we did, and we know how the individual reacted and things. But the problem is that we're not writing it down on paper. And so that's what we really want to see. We want to see that you are capturing what the person is doing, and if it's how it's relevant to the outcome, what kind of progress they're making. And so yes, and when you put together an action step for somebody, you can spell it out for yourself. This is exactly what we're going to do to get this person there, and we're going to check it off every time we go. And we're going to talk about how they completed this action step and what's next for this person to get towards progress. So
I think an example I like to use, because it's pretty simplistic, is a person who might have an outcome that they want to have their license and have a car. So in those action steps, you're going to start with, they have a job, so they have the means, but you would build that. So you would be going with the person to the BMV and getting the study book. They would need to, pass their temps. They would have to look into insurance. They would have to look into how much it would cost to buy cars. So as you're completing those steps could be taken off the action plan once you've completed them, but you're building those steps to the end where the person is able to, has their license, can drive a car, has purchased a car, and the outcome's been met. So exactly like you said, those steps are progressing that person to achieve that outcome and then gain that independence that they're searching for. So
I have a question about the support considerations, because unfortunately, Jamie, I'm just not quite
I know.
there
We're
with
going
them.
to talk about that too.
Yeah. So as I was reading through some of the support considerations, they just appeared to be more like action steps. And so when you were looking at the plan and it was like interests and likes and aspirations, those to me translate more as support considerations for volunteering, for instance. Like, I don't need to necessarily know that I could consider volunteering as a step to employment, but I might need to know if this person's terrified of dogs, because that's come up in conversations. And so we're not going to go explore that if that's a support consideration I could already have an insight on.
And I do agree with that. And that is, I mentioned earlier, like that the idea is that they're written just like you said. Keep these things in mind when you're supporting this person and providing this service. If as a person's getting a job, it should talk about some of the stuff that they're interested in doing and stuff to stay away from. Like, keep in mind that they don't like dogs, so working with dogs is probably not the best idea. Or keep in mind that this person wants to work at night, not during the day. Keep in mind that they, have a very low stamina, and so start small, those sorts of things.
Or they're passionate about something, and it might be a
Yeah.
good way to entice somebody to go into something
Right.
they really
And-
like. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes they're written as ideas, almost like action steps too. And I know I do understand the confusion. So I think that's where you talk to the ISC about that and, get some clearer answers if you're not sure exactly what those support considerations are trying to tell you. Or if you feel like maybe something needs to be added more. Some people like things that are really concrete, and some people are okay if they're super broad. And so you guys, the team should find out what works best for that person and that plan. And the provider, or in the action steps though, is where the provider has the freedom to, do whatever it is that they want to do to help that person get there. Some people use those support considerations as action steps also. So I really do. I know it's not consistent. Unfortunately, I don't have the power to fix that. But just keep in mind that if you're looking at the support considerations and you're trying to do an action step and you're just really having a hard time, reach out to the ISC and get some clarification. Because I do know that sometimes there be very small amount of support considerations, and then they may not be helpful. And other plans you're going to have 2 pages of support considerations, and so you really just need to ask for clarification if you are unsure. So, okay, if everybody's ready. So I'm going to send everybody to a breakout room, and each breakout room is going to have a member of our team. So Chelsea, Pam, Kristen, Kyle, or I will be in a room with you. I had to remember who was all here. And so we will have a completed action plan filled out for you to look at. And the idea is going to be that we're going to talk about the outcome, look at the support considerations, and then as a team, we are the provider. The team is a provider, and we are going to write some action steps. And then what I would like to do is get some of those written out, and then maybe use some examples of what we can put on a learning log. So here's your action steps. Let's think of some examples as to what we can put on the action or on the learning log that demonstrates progress towards an outcome. We have to use our imaginations a little bit, and that's why we will be there to help facilitate. But we really want you guys to talk to each other and work together, problem solve some things. And then I would like for each group to have somebody come back and talk about their action plan and talk about the steps that they put together, and maybe a couple examples of how they are going to document progress towards this particular outcome. Also, if these action plans, I changed the names of the people and I might have tweaked some of the wording. So if it might be one that you're like, this is just not clear enough for me, I really need some assistance with understanding what these support considerations are trying to tell me, then let's talk about that too. So I'm going to send you guys off. Hey, Anne, are you still here?
I'm here.
Okay. After I send people, is it going to give me the option to put in a time limit?
You actually can do it right now. If you look at the breakout room, down where it says options, it should let you do it right now. And for those of you who haven't been in a breakout room before, we will move you automatically. Those of you who are on the phone, hang on with us because we will have to manually potentially move you just in case you don't. Sometimes it's a little weird with the phone. And then Jamie, do you want to do a countdown? So people know when
Yes,
they're.
I have a countdown. So 60 seconds before the room is going to end, then you guys will know. And it'll send you back, or you can go back if you're finished. But about 7 minutes, because there's going to be some stuff. There's going to be some there's going to be so much conversation that 7 minutes is not going to be enough time, right? Right. Okay.